Well, good morning. Welcome to another episode of Investigate Everything. I'm your host, Brian O'Shea. Today we have a special episode. We are going to go through the entire Mamdani campaign. Now, if you don't know who that is the man who won the primaries for mayor of New York. He beat out Cuomo, who is a storied name in New York politics. Our guest will be able to tell us even more about what that is and what that means, especially in New York. But before we bring on our guest to really break it down, I want to talk about what I've witnessed. So, as you know, I have a deep history in kind of influence campaigns, propaganda, media manipulation. Can't really get into the details of that. But I, like many of you, had never heard of this guy. His name is Zohran Mamdani, and he is originally born in Uganda, but he's Indian. He recently got his citizenship in the United States, according to his campaign, and he just took New York by storm. Now, at first, like many of you, I was angry. How could the New Yorkers, be so stupid and hire this socialist and communist? And I take a step back when I feel myself getting enraged about something. Because when you're getting enraged about something, just like if you've ever seen boxing where they do the weigh-in and they glare at each other, that means your adrenaline's pumping. That means you're not thinking. So I started thinking and I started researching his campaign. And now I get it. Now I get it. And I can tell you what he did is he talked to everyone, or gave the appearance that he talked to everyone. He also has a very robust and sophisticated network through a lot of the apps like mobilize.us, through the many, many, many groups that backed him up. But what I really saw was the messaging was spot on. He took a populist message, he removed the Democrat socialist flavor from his message for the most part. And that's what he campaigned on. He said, hey, you have high rent. I'm going to get rid of high rent. Hey, is food too expensive? Yeah, I think it's too expensive too. We're going to get rid of that. But remember that campaigns are all about, sound bites and snapshots. And if you look at all of his advertising, all of his videos, he's walking in the Bronx, and then it flips frame and he's walking in Staten Island, and then he's walking in Brooklyn. He's walking on the streets, and if you've never lived in New York City, you don't understand why this works. And why this works is because he's showing he's part of the community. And in New York, don't get me wrong, and I live in New York part time, so I can say this. We'll fight, we'll yell, we'll flip each other the bird. You got to beep at least 15 times when you're sitting in traffic for less than a minute or more. Okay, but it's our city. We don't like anyone coming in and acting like they're going to change our city. Well, he really sold himself as this native New Yorker, and he's barely, if any, a native New Yorker, but he really sold it. He sold it well, but he went out and he talked to people, and he found out, what are your key issues? Why'd you vote for Trump? He was doing this in January. So remember that when you get mad, getting mad's not going to matter. If you're not living in New York City, for the most part, what you say is not going to matter. If you tell New Yorkers that, oh, he's a communist, you shouldn't vote for him, that matters, but you better be able to explain what communism is and how it affects people locally. Okay, so don't get mad, get smart, get strategic, and really explore this campaign, explore it with us. We're going to talk about it today because this campaign matters. You might say, I don't live in New York City, I don't care. Well, you should care, because New York City is really the brain center of this country. It is the financial center of this country. And it has one of the biggest populations in this country. So it does matter. When you control New York City, you control much more than New Yorkers. You control almost everything, the key ports, the influence you have. We've seen it. Okay, so pay attention and remember, be ready next time, and be ready coming up for these elections if you are going to mess with the Zohran. Couldn't resist. So Bringing to the stage now is my guest, Jimmy Wagner. Jimmy is an attorney at law. He's also the president of the fairly new Donald J. Trump Kings County Republican Club. I had the pleasure of meeting Jimmy recently for dinner right there in Brooklyn, and really, he gets it. This man understands New York. This man understands the pulse of campaigns. And, this man understands why when you see a million of these all over your neighbor's doors, why you might have a problem in a campaign, and many, many other things. So let me bring Jimmy to the stage now. I'm very much looking forward to this interview because I think you're going to learn a lot and take notes. Get out your pencil, get out your notebook, take notes. And if you have questions for Jimmy after the interview, this is pre-recorded, I will get those to Jimmy. I think those are important. But most important, we want to hear from New Yorkers. Okay, so without much further ado, I'm bringing Jimmy to the stage. Jimmy Wagner, welcome.
Good morning, Brian. Thank you for having me, man.
Good morning, and thanks for being here. So, before we have you go into the details, because I know you're dying to, and tell us a little bit about yourself. How do you get here? You've been a lawyer for some time, but now you're running the Republican Club, the much-needed Republican Club in Kings County. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself more than I did?
Sure. So, look, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I've spent my entire life here. Rarely do I even travel outside Brooklyn, let alone a world traveler, right? The To give you a history, my family is working class Irish. We My father was an elected union official in Brooklyn. I worked for Senator interns. I wasn't paid, but I did it through school, Senator Hillary Clinton. So I have a long bloodline of working class New York, Democratic working class, and I had been a Democrat registered up until recently. I working with a lot of other working class New Yorkers, as if they may or may not know, during the COVID pandemic, due process for civil servants, for working class New Yorkers, was absolutely stripped. It was removed. We lost in courts time and time again. After the final Court of Appeals decision came down, I met with the people who lost their case, and they said, "How can we fix this?" I said, "We have to fix this through legislation." So we reached out to who was supposed to be the working class Democrats to help us. We reached out to them. They ignored us. They didn't take our calls. We reached out to the Republican Party in Kings County. We had the opportunity to meet with the chairman of the Republican Party in Kings County, Mr. Richard Barsamian, and he granted us the green light to start this club for this issue of due process for workers in Kings County. On the Republican line, he said, "I just ask you one thing. You all have to give up your Democratic registration, join the Republican Party, register as Republicans." And we ended up doing that on the spot, registered as Republicans. So I don't want your listeners to think that I'm just some right-wing MAGA person. I'm really not.
Right.
Being brought into this fold to understand that the Democratic Party, definitely at a local level in New York City, is no longer for the working class.
Gotcha. So totally understand. And it's interesting that outside, I've never been part of any real partisan side up until I really didn't get pulled over to one side or the other until after the pandemic in 2020. And then I felt myself, I kind of had to go in one direction because you can't go it alone during those times or times moving forward. So what I took out of what you just said about, I think it's very important, is first of all, like I said in the opening monologue, you say you rarely leave Brooklyn, and I notice I say New York City because I'm not a native New York City guy. Well, technically, I was born in I was born in Inglewood, but I was raised in the Bronx. Inglewood just happened to be the closest hospital, so I was raised in the Bronx, but only to like 4, so it doesn't count. But you said Brooklyn, you didn't say New York City, and there is for people that don't know New York City, there's a lot of identity associated with your borough. And can you tell me where a lot of, I would say politicians, because I won't just say Republicans, where politicians get it wrong when they strategize in New York City, and where they get it right.
So I understanding like growing up in Brooklyn, if I was going to Manhattan, my friends, even to this day, will say, "Hey, we're going to the city tonight," and that's so you have the outer boroughs. You have Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx, and it's all centered around the island of Manhattan. The Brooklyn is the most populous of all the boroughs. If you look, Bill de Blasio was from Brooklyn. He was 2 mayors ago. Mayor Adams is from Brooklyn. And then they they get their build up their base here in Brooklyn because you can get 400,000 500,000 voters in Brooklyn, and you'll carry every single citywide election just on the Brooklyn population. So there's a lot of value of understanding Brooklyn. The problem is once all Brooklyn elected politicians get into office, they end up trying to turn Manhattan. They try to turn Brooklyn into Little Manhattan, and they do
Mm.
that with things like the bike lanes, the congestion pricing. It is going not. They're going to increase it in Manhattan, and then they're going to bring it to Brooklyn without a
L-
doubt.
let's back up and talk about those bike lanes. And it might sound, and again, audience, everything I bring up, you know me, it matters. Bike lanes matter. This is an issue. Can you tell us a little bit about? I've read a lot about this bike lane controversy. They're going to stay. They're going to go. They're going to put in more. They're bad. They're good. Tell us about the bike lanes and why it matters to even big elections.
So bike lanes within New York City, they had they shorten the width of our roads. So most roads, major throughways in Brooklyn, have enough room for 2 3 cars on going north, going both ways, east west, north south, right? They've included these bike lanes where they've now given an entire car lane essentially to the bikes, and now they move parking from off the curb to the next lane over.
Mm.
So they have drastically reduced the ability of people in Brooklyn to get around via a car. So everyone hears about the historic subway system in New York City, and it is an amazing system, right? But there are substantial areas in the outer boroughs in Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, and in Staten Island where you have to get on a bus or drive to the train station to get on the train. They've now made that impossible. And if you take a look at the bike lanes throughout Brooklyn, they're rarely used. I would, if I had a gander, take a guess, I would say less than 5% of the total population of Brooklyn is using bike lanes. And the
Yeah,
idea,
yeah. The only people I see them are those delivery guys that almost always hit me.
right? So who do the bike lanes benefit? Do they benefit the citizens? Absolutely not. But they do benefit Uber, right? Because now the traffic is so bad all throughout Brooklyn, people do not want to get in their car. I don't want to get in my car to drive because I'm going to be
Yeah.
sitting in traffic. So what do? Right? I call Uber. Now, like you said, the delivery people using Uber Eats or whatever other
Right.
they have a private lane to race through to get the food to the people quicker. And now if you look, there's a pack called the Uber pack. I haven't done the research, but the name of it
There's a
implies
political action committee for Uber.
yes. It's called Uber Pack. I don't listen. The name implies that it's referenced that it's supported by Uber, the corporation, somehow. That
Right.
may be an illusion. I have not done the research, but 100% within New York City, New York State, there's an Uber Pact, and they sent out only because I'm volunteering, doing a lot of work for a Republican candidate named Athena Clark. Her
Mm-hmm.
opponent's Mercedes Narcisse. The Uber, they were sending out tons of flyers in support of Mercedes Narcisse. Right. So if you don't think that in our
Ex-
southern area of Brooklyn, if you don't think they're going to expand the bike lanes,
mm-hmm.
there's an individual named Lenny Mark trying to get Athena off the ballot. I can send you the articles where he was one of the pivotal people in getting bike lanes in southern Brooklyn. They are going to expand these bike lanes. They're going to increase the demand for Uber and the deliveries. And it's just not, look, that's a Manhattan thing, and I get it. People historically always took mass transit into Manhattan because of the the constant congestion and whatnot. But now
Right.
they're manufacturing congestion to tax you on it and then compelling and forcing you to use things like Uber and Uber Eats.
Well, and you brought up. I'm glad you brought that up because I live in it's a secure access building. You got to go through two doors. Not impossible, but I went down on Flatbush. I get home and these things are on every single door, every single door, and I'm like, how they get in here? But if you look at apps like Mobilize.us or Action Network, these are customer resource management systems that have been repurposed like CRMs. And what they do is they actually have plugins, you're going to love this, for Uber. And so the way it works is you can get a subscription for about $10 to $99 a month. You can load all your contacts into there. And then from there you start your campaign, and the campaign will, using that software, go out. They even give you recommended slogans, social media, post social media scripts. You upload a link to your Google Drive, and then you send this out to all your chapters, and it's protest on demand, it's campaign on demand. And that's why you may have noticed with like Black Lives Matter or the Jewish ceasefire protests, all of the wording, all of the T-shirts, all the signage was exactly the same across the country. That's how they do it. So with you mentioned the Uber pack, that's what I watched the guy. This wasn't Uber. This was food delivery too, because they do that. So it's probably Uber Eats. But these guys have stacks of these flyers, and they're putting them on everyone's door. Now that's powerful, because if you don't know any better, you're thinking, well, this is a Zohran-friendly building. I better get with the program, because, as you know, in New York, your building is your core community, and then you have bigger communities out from that. But you can't miss too many of the owner HOA type meetings in the building, because you don't want to get othered by the other people. You don't want to have your barbecue on the roof and have people looking at you funny. So you want to at least participate. And I've seen these things, and they're like mini governments. And so it's a real way to get at. You get one influential building member or board member of a big building like mine. That's a lot of voters, and they have influence at their work, and so on and so forth. So I'm glad you brought that up. I also noticed that I didn't see. These are the Democratic primaries, so we're just going to talk about that. But I didn't see any. I didn't even know Cuomo was running.
Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout. Have you ever wondered why your brain can feel foggy even when you're eating clean and exercising? It might not be burnout, it could be parasites. Groundbreaking research from Dr. Alan McDonald reveals a direct link between chronic parasite infections and neurological diseases such as multiple sclerosis. Parasites can cause inflammation, nerve damage, and long-term cognitive decline. More reason to do a full body cleanse at least once a year. The wellness company has a solution for you: ivermectin and mebendazole, the gold standard parasite solution, now combined in one cleanse combo, designed to eliminate harmful invaders and support your immune system naturally. Medical grade, not some trendy herbal gimmick. Fill out a quick intake form and you'll get a 3-month supply shipped straight to your door. Maha is officially here, and the wellness company is making hard to get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Head to dailyclout.health and use code dailyclout to save $60 off plus free shipping on all orders. Cleanse your body today. Get rid of parasites today. Thank you.
What was he thinking? I feel like he was totally out of touch at all. And I think you may have predicted Zohran's rise. Isn't that right?
I did. I look, I was the canary in the coal mine for the socialist. What I call it's a famous socialist statement. It's a chicken in every pot. He comes out. It's we're going to give you a chicken in every pot. We're going to make buses free. Let's be very clear. Nothing the government does is free. It's taxpayer funded. Nobody in New York City pays for buses anymore anyway. So let's be very clear. During COVID, there was a terrible tragedy. A bus driver was killed for asking somebody for a fare. And I spoke to my friend Tom Massey. I said, what's going on? The union has directed them, anyone who wants to walk on the bus, don't interfere anymore. If the city is not going to, provide us protection, we're not.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I feel bad for the bus drivers, right? Imagine during COVID, right? So no one's paying for the buses anymore anyway. So let's talk about the rent freeze. Yeah, nobody wants to pay higher rent. The reality is, can the mayor unilaterally freeze rents? Let's say he could freeze the rents based on the people he appoints to the rent stabilization board. He could probably get away with freezing rents for a little bit for a small percentage of tenants, but not the entirety of New York City. It's just an illusion, and it's an intentional misrepresentation of his powers. Next, government-run grocery stores. Wow. I mean, that's been tried over and over again, and we just recently saw what happened in, I believe it was Venezuela. It just doesn't work.
No.
The government, unfortunately, look, Thomas Paine famously said, government is evil, right? Government is evil. It's a necessary evil. Government can't do anything right. Government can't do housing right in New York City. Look at NYCHA. There's nobody who grows up in Brooklyn and says, hey, I want to grow up and move in the projects. Everyone I knew who grew up in the projects said, hey, I want to grow up and move out of the projects. Government doesn't do housing right. Government doesn't do education right. If you take a look at our fourth graders, nobody's reading right at their level. There's nothing government does right. And now we're going to get in this 33-year-old mayor. He has never operated a business, never run a business. He's never had to fire somebody, as far as I know. Maybe on his small campaign.
And that's an important thing to be able to do.
It sounds ridiculous. I'm a small business owner. Firing people is difficult. It's not an easy task.
Yep.
And he's going to be managing millions of New York City workers. He's also 100% as regards to medical freedom. He said absolutely not. He said, if there's another pandemic of any type, the government has the authority and the ability to forcibly a vaccine on the people. No due process. Yeah, he did that on NYPD's Finest Unfiltered. Supporting and ending deed theft. That's a fair one, right? As an attorney who works with a lot of senior citizens who get scammed, that there's a lot the government can do to stop that, and it's terrible when it happens. The New York, it's just he sold people on a chicken in every pot. It's the same socialist lie, and it's just over and over again. And when we move to Andrew Cuomo ran for mayor after being a 3-term governor. He resigned in his 3rd term because of sexual harassment allegations of 13 subordinates, 13 young women who worked for him. Like, you don't get to resign in disgrace for something like that and then come back. The same people who fought the integrity of the Democratic machine in New York City, the same people that forced Governor Cuomo out, were the same people who turned around and told us to go out and vote for him and endorsed him.
Really?
Within 3 years, yes. The same politicians. You could do a side-by-side list. 80% of the same politicians that turned around and forced Cuomo out are the same people that said, hey, you know what? We were wrong 3 years ago. We forced him out, but now we want him to be the mayor. The people, they recognize that. They felt that. And, I've had different discussions with people about Andrew Cuomo. Look, realistically, I firmly believe if you're a 3-term governor, unless you did something wrong, you're not resigning.
Right.
And that's just me. I would never resign if I didn't do anything wrong. If Cuomo didn't do anything wrong, why didn't he resign? Some people say, hey, he was never criminally prosecuted. Look, hitting on female insubordinates when you're their supervisor isn't a criminal illegal action. It's an HR issue. It's a civil issue. So just because the DAs, he kept saying during the debates, the district attorneys, nobody prosecuted me. Okay, you didn't take your improper actions to the level of a criminal prosecution doesn't mean that those young women working under you weren't harassed. Like, you're the
Exactly.
governor of New
Exactly.
York State. Like,
Yeah,
please.
we're supposed to trust you. You're supposed to keep our city safe. Um, yeah, no, we followed that whole thing, and he also wielded immense power, above all other governors. I thought. I'm glad during COVID he was not the mayor of New York,
Right.
because that would have been, it was already a kind of a hellscape. I didn't think it was that bad, not as bad as the news made it look, but can you imagine? I mean, De Blasio always struck me as kind of a bit like a jellyfish, like compared to Cuomo. Let's face it, this guy's a wolf, and I just think, let's segue back into the campaign though. Cuomo's been around the block. He's born and raised in politics. I mean, that is a storied New York politician's name. How did he get it so wrong?
Listen, you can't run on daddy's coattails your whole life. It's that simple. What did he do as governor? He was the architect of the cashless bail system, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason we have crime running rampant in New York City is because they can't lock these people up on bail, and it's just a revolving door. Who was the architect of that? Andrew Cuomo. He talks about living wages. He talks about raising the minimum wage. He had the opportunity to raise it. They raised it a nominal amount of money. During COVID, it was 100% a tyranny under Andrew Cuomo. And I believe, I'd have to double check, I believe under Andrew Cuomo, we lost all religious exemptions for medical rights, right? It was,
Yep.
Under Andrew Cuomo. So here's another one that divides a lot of people, and I'm going to bring it up. He increased the statute of limitations to go after people who harmed children, right? And that, on the surface, that seems it's a legitimate reason. But reality, what it was to do was to attack the churches, to allow people 30, 40, 50 years ago to come in with an allegation that they had never made previously, that while they were in the church, one of the priests or somebody did something wrong to them.
Mm-hmm.
And he increased that statute of limitations. He gave people more time to sue for these type of things, which, look, things happened 40, 50 years ago. It's almost impossible to defend. As an attorney,
now, you're a lawyer, really quickly, so I just want to make sure I understand this, because it's creeping up in a very scary way for me as you're explaining this. Does that statute include when you can bring allegations?
It did. So right. Yeah, it was a full on, in my opinion, attempt to shut down and destroy my Catholic Church here in the state of New York, right? Because it was just the ambulance chasing lawyers out there just turned on the faucet, and everyone who had a bad nightmare of a church experience was now saying, "Hey, I remembered." Right. Look, and was there terrible things done by priests? That absolutely, and should people be held accountable and punished? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But listen, why would you increase the statute of limitations and really focused on this one, the Catholic institution? There's a lot to be said. He took that money for writing the COVID book. The taxpayers funded. It was like $5 million. There's a large portion of people with the nursing home tragedies where he was putting people back into the nursing homes positive for COVID. This all happened within the last 3 years. This isn't like something, and like Anthony Weiner running downtown in Manhattan for city council, where it was something he did a decade ago. This is a governor who resigned 3 years ago and is coming in. And, very recent.
And New Yorkers don't. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you could ask any New Yorker, what they think about Lenin, and they'll shrug their shoulders. What are you talking about? No offense. You ask them what any local to state level politician did for lunch 5 years ago, and they could tell you, line and verse. And you saw my opening. And this is important that you bring up Cuomo, because to me it seemed like he was kind of just barging into New York City. And you saw my opening statement. I said, it's our city. It's like I'm Irish Catholic too, so it's kind of like being in a Irish Catholic family. We were 9 of us fighting all the time, hated each other, beating the hell out of each other. But if someone else came in and tried to beat the hell out of any of us, we're going to pounce on them. We'll circle the wagons. I feel that way with New York, down to the borough and the outer borough level. To me, and I was asking people about Cuomo when I was talking, and I have a funny story for you, by the way, towards the end. But I was asking people. I like to take the dog out at night. I'll sit on the stoop with anyone if they invite me. Dogs are a great way. I think every politician should have an army of dogs and have their people take their dog for a walk, and especially in New York, because if you want to get a conversation going with anyone, the dog is the greatest way to do it. But I was just talking to some guys, this guy named Lewis, this guy named Mark, and they're around the block over there in Flatbush. And I said, I heard Cuomo's running. And they're like, well, he better keep running. And he said, running out of here. You're like, they don't like it because they see it as, okay, now Albany's coming down. They're going to try to bring all that stuff here. And I try to explain this to my audience. My audience is pretty astute. They actually investigate everything. They if they feel emotions when they're watching a news story, then they start thinking. Because just like that boxing weigh-in, when you glare at the other guy, that's all about getting the adrenaline going. I think a lot of these campaigns, the way they're shoved at like conservatives, is intentionally to get conservatives mad, and to divide us. When you hear conservatives in Indiana saying, screw New York, it doesn't matter, they're stupid. They're not stupid. Obviously, we're not stupid, but they don't understand New York, and it's important that they do because the whole country is kind of like becoming like New York with boroughs everywhere and islands and clubs. So what I wanted to ask you is the reason I brought up those guys on the block is that I did notice that Zohran was bouncing. I don't know if you saw the video campaigns he had. They're brilliant. But he's talking, then he's in Staten Island, then he's in Midtown, and then he's in Brooklyn, then he's in Harlem, then he's in the Bronx. And apparently one week, I guess he didn't walk the entire length, obviously, but he hit almost every single neighborhood or borough in New York City in a span of a few days. And so for people that don't understand, such as my good friend J.J. Carroll, who was shooting a documentary in New York, and his plan was, we'll hit New York. We'll hit New York on Saturday, then we'll bounce up to Boston and hit Boston. I'm like, you're going to get through like one borough, and what are you talking about? But this guy, he did. And what I noticed was that it seemed exciting. Like, quite honestly, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way to anyone's race or ethnicity. I honestly thought when I found the flyer it was for some sort of like Eastern church. The lettering, the way it's done. But when you see this guy on the street, just like anything that happens in New York, whether it's a movie or anything, I did see one of them. I thought that they were shooting a movie. I'm like, cool. Everyone wants to go peek in, see what movie is being shot, see if you catch a view of a star. Happens all the time in New York. And it was this guy. I didn't know who he was at the time, but I went back and checked my phone. I was like, it's this guy. But honestly, it seemed like they were shooting some major movie, and people just flocked to that. And what was smart was capturing that on video, and then using that video to give the appearance that all of New York is behind this guy, because that's how he marketed it. What are your thoughts on that?
You have to stay healthy and well at times like this. You know that I often have suffered from mobility issues, and now I don't. Part of my lifestyle is Native Path collagen. So Native Path's collagen formula is made with ingredients that are scientifically developed to increase bone mineral density, support tissue recovery, reduce wrinkles, enhance hair thickness, and strengthen nails. Who wouldn't want more collagen with all of these benefits? So right now, when you visit getnativepath.com/dailyclout, you can stock up on Native Path Collagen for up to an incredible 45% off today, plus free shipping. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You can try it risk-free today. It is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners, and it's third-party tested for heavy metals, which makes sure that it is pure and safe. It's flavorless. You can add it to anything. I add it to my oatmeal. You can add it to coffee or smoothies. Its formula makes it more bioavailable, meaning it's absorbed more easily and mixes without clumping. And the best part is Native Path is offering amazing bundle deals, 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee, Native Path is a trusted choice, and they offer an 800 number. You can ask any question. A real person is waiting to help. You can join a private Facebook community. I love these people. Share recipes, success stories. So that's getnativepath.com/dailyclout and start your experience of transformation today.
The number one is his commercials, his social media commercials from the beginning. Well, I agree with you. Absolutely brilliant is the way he walked each of the boroughs. And again, I don't agree with his policies. Just
Right.
on a business level, the marketing he had, it was brilliant. They did an excellent job. More important than that was the teams of volunteers he had out, right? As somebody who's tried to mobilize people to get people on the ballot, to get volunteers, if you get 6 to 10, you're having a good day. A lot of times we'd go out with 3 to 4 volunteers. His teams of volunteers, to get 60 volunteers out, it's impressive. And again, it's the chicken in every pot. Maybe what the Republicans need to start doing is making these same type of false promises, because he had an army of volunteers that if he's able to manufacture that amount of interest in volunteer work to get the groundwork done, it's going to be very difficult for anybody to overcome.
Well, and if you look at his his website, there's what he has is these endorsements that he has here. Let me just share this really quickly. Okay, so if you look at these endorsements, obviously, I don't think these days the first ones, he should probably move these to the bottom.
Right.
I don't think they're doing him any favors, but for some people they are. But if you get to the bottom here and you go to, this is where you get into all the organizations, okay, and it's every single socialist or union. You see a lot of your unions are in here. Nurses. I was actually blown away that he had all of these Jewish Voice for Peace, by the way, is barely a Jewish organization. I've done a full investigation on that. But the point is, if you don't know any better, you're like, wow, everyone likes him. Every religion likes him. Every ethnic group likes him. Every union likes him. And one thing, I think it's important that you explain to people who don't know New York, unions are important. Whether a lot of conservatives are they don't like even the sound of unions, or like that's communist, that's everything like that, and in some cases it is. But what I'm saying is, you've got to have the unions, don't you, in New York, or you're not getting anywhere.
So there's a difference between rank and file and union leadership. Union leadership right now, in my opinion, in New York City is as corrupt as the politicians like Cuomo. Cuomo went out and he had tons of unions endorsing him. That wasn't the message from rank and file, right? Go on the street, talk to rank and file. Most of them, they don't even vote for their union leaders anymore because they feel it's rigged. It's a very, I agree with you, historically, having union support like Cuomo did would have been a grand slam. However, it didn't turn into the type of support that he needed to win the primary. Zohan's, the first 4 pictures you showed up there, Bernie Sanders and AOC, The two of them are rock stars in New York City.
Really?
Really, really. Bernie Sanders and AO. So I have a very good friend. Her name is Claudia, right? And her family came here from Ecuador, and me and her have tons of discussions. And she is beholden to anything Senator Bernie Sanders says. I don't agree with anything he says, but at least his message has been this consistent communist message. Elizabeth Warren's just a liar. She means nothing here in New York. Jerry Nadler.
Well, she's also a Red Sox fan, so I'm sure that doesn't help her.
Right. And AOC, she's a rock star here in New York City. You don't need to agree with these people. It's just recognizing their influence. So you take Elizabeth Warren out. Bernie Sanders' stretch does definitely hit the younger groups here in New York City. Like I've tried speaking to the people about their policies, and they just believe everything to blame is a money issue. Everything can be fixed by taking somebody else's money, and they just don't understand basic economics.
And what kind of when you're talking, and I'm glad to hear that you're out there. I figure you would be. What are the demographics of these people you're talking to? Are they college educated? Are they working class? And you should probably explain what working class really means.
Right.
But who are these people? What would you say that are voting for, like who like Bernie Sanders or think Ocasio-Cortez is a rock star?
Right. So let's talk about working class. What does working class really mean? So my understanding, at least in Brooklyn, working class is my brother Mike. My brother Mike did 20 years for New York City sanitation, picking up people's garbage and throwing it out every day. People don't want to throw their own garbage out. My brother did 20 years of throwing out other people's garbage, right? Working class. The cop on the beat, working class. The janitor in the school, working class. The people in Brooklyn, at least, that are claiming they're working class, but they're for AOC or Bernie Sanders, what they really are is an overeducated administrative class, right? They're like,
I like that. Yeah.
So the I'll give you going back to
like the laptop class, as I always call them.
Right. The laptop class.
They've got time to sit in. They've got time to sit in Starbucks in Midtown for hours and think about the great American novel that they're going to write someday.
Right, and having a dream is good, and there's a purpose to it. I don't consider them that type of worker to be the working class. You're the cashier at Walden Books. Listen, that's a great job to help you get through college. That's a great job if you retired without a pension. That is not the job that you're supposed to be doing for your entire career. Let's be very clear. It should be Barnes and Nobles, right? There's a big Barnes and Nobles down in Park Slope. There's a big Barnes. I love just going to the bookstore. However, there's a lot of people that it's very easy to go onto Amazon, go to and just type in. They unionize the workers at the Barnes and Nobles. Listen, Barnes and Nobles isn't making money. Like Barnes and Nobles is a struggling retail industry. But for these people to turn around and for us to call them working class, it is just an actual insult to the actual working class members of society, right? I don't want to make light of a cashier's job, but realistically, we can go to McDonald's.
What about the cashier that goes to mom and pop's bodega? They're working every day. I mean, some of these people, I see them at 3 bodegas. Like, I see them in the morning, and then I go across town, and I see the same guy, and I'm like, holy, I'm like, do you sleep? Is my running joke. He's like, no, I got to keep working. I mean, I would consider them working class. They're not doing manual labor per se, but they're grinding it out.
I would agree that that's a grind out, and as long as that's not the final destination, I mean, famous in Brooklyn legend, right? And it's not a legend; it's a true story. Is Charles Ebbett? You know who that is?
I don't.
Ebbets Field.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers. You know how he started?
How?
As a ticket salesman for the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Right.
As a 14, 15-year-old kid selling tickets to the Dodgers games, he went on to own the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Amazing.
If you're the kid that's working 3 different bodegas and you go on to own your own bodega, that is the American dream, right? That's progress. If you're the person with a master's degree in fine literature or fine art from Columbia and you're the cashier at a Walden Books, if that's the end of your road, you're not working class. You're a very smart person. I don't doubt your intellect
I
for a
get it.
second. What I doubt is there's a large class of intellects in America who think being smart entitles them to money, and they don't get it that not all smart people end up rich, and not all rich people are smart. Having the ability, right? Having the ability to make money it's a skill in of itself. Maybe go to a school that teaches that skill. And for all the people who mock and laugh at our current president, he made money. Like, it's taking your father's inheritance and turning that into $1 billion is a skill.
Yeah, totally. Well,
right.
It's like my dad, right? So he was born in he's born in Ireland, but then they moved to the Bronx almost right away. And they're very very poor. It's Irish family, and he went to the Navy back because he was in a gang. Little Irish gang. I think it was called like the Conway Brothers or something like that. And I remember he used to show us his knife wounds when we were kids. Like, hey, cool, Dad. We're up in Maine. We're like, Dad's okay, And so we thought that was normal. Like, your dad doesn't have knife wounds. So, but he had to go to the Navy or go to jail back when they did that. He went to the Navy, did his stint. He was probably running illegal gambling rings on the destroyer, and then when he got back to New York, basically he was given a donut shop because some guy lost him in a poker game. He was given a donut shop that was stacked. He stupidly took it. Is stacked with debt. He has no idea how to make a donut. He's a diabetic. He can't eat them anyways, but he needed to make money. Because he's out of the Navy, he has no money, he wants to find a girl and marry her, he can't do that without money, he knew it. So he called, he had some flour that came with the thing, and he looked at it, and it said, if you have more than this many pounds of flour, call this number for a free consultation. Well, he had it, so he called them, and he had the guy from Pillsbury come out for 3 days and teach him how to make donuts. He'd never baked a thing in his life. And then he would just grind it out, and then he would buy, like, some of the loose change and get that he'd make in the donut shop, because restaurant business is not an easy way to make money, especially a diner, especially with no experience. My dad had a GED, and he basically would buy. He was always finding something to make money. Like, it was never like, I'm gonna buy this Italian ice cart because I like Italian ice. I'm going to buy this because I can make $100 extra a week by owning that and having someone else push it around. He would buy cars when we were kids up in Maine. I remember being 13. He'd see a car for like $500, like a used car. He'd get the guy down to $300. He'd have one of us kids illegally drive it up the shoulder to his other property, where he'd park it on the front lawn and put a price of $800. So, but always, and he left my mom in a very good position by the time he died, and but he worked and worked and worked and worked. I mean, the man worked 364 days a year, but he was able to raise 9 kids and leave his wife in a great position, and gave me that kind of work ethic, that kind of drive, like always be going, always be moving, always be grinding. So like the example you gave of the the founder of this great baseball team, I see, and that's what you would consider working class. It's like it's about the ethic as well as the energy, and I think I understand.
Right, and I'm not taking and if I came off the wrong way, I'm not taking away from the cashiers. But if you had the cashier at Barnes and Nobles or Walden Books say, you know what, I have a better idea, and then they earn that time, and then they own the next corner store, bookstore, right?
Right, yeah,
right, and that's what I mean. Certain professions, like you should always be climbing Jacob's ladder, right? Everyone
totally agree with you.
Moving up, and to turn around and say, so Mr. Zohran Mamdani, he wants to increase minimum wage to $30 an hour, right? I'm going to tell you, as a small business owner in New York City, if in fact that was to come into play, I'd have to decide who I'm going to let go, right?
Mm.
So here's what people don't understand: if you're paying a minimum wage of $30 an hour, increase that by another $5 to $8 an hour, because now I have to pay their unemployment tax, I have to pay their social security contributions. Their $30 an hour is now $40 an hour. Am I going to pay my
No,
receptionist $40? I'm not. I can't.
you
Right.
can't.
I can't do it. So there's so many different factors. And to go back to McDonald's, look at the cashiers now. Going to I enjoy McDonald's. Going to McDonald's, they have self-serve. They're gonna have robots replacing these type of
They
positions.
have to, because like it's so expensive. Like my son wanted a bacon double cheeseburger the other day. We never eat McDonald's,
Right.
but he's in great shape. He just finished a football season. He's great. Getting ready to graduate. I'm like, yeah, why not? And so we go through, and for like two drinks and two of these dinky burgers, man, it was almost $20. And I think they put that cost. And the reason I bring that up is I think a lot of these, and I get it, you definitely did not come across wrong. I know exactly who you're talking about. Those cashiers are different than the cashier at like my corner store who's like,
Right.
yeah, I'll talk to him. He's like, yeah, so I'm thinking, I talked to my uncle who owns this place, and I was saying, hey, why don't we get a propane locker outside? Because then people do propane exchange, and he's going to let me run that. And I said, what's your plan here? And he goes, well, my plan is, the way my family works is, once you make enough money for the store based on your hours and your input, then everyone gets together and they build you a store. And they're always climbing up, so I get it. But where was I going with that? So, but yeah, what I find is that that's what I was going to say. A lot of the people who say, for instance, unionize at, like, for instance, the Strand bookstore. Do you know those guys?
I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're friends with her, and her husband is the Oregon senator, right?
I didn't know that, but
Yeah,
I know that. I know that. Right. Yep.
really nice people. But we went there, and they were trying. First, they were trying to shut her down by making Strand a historical landmark, which is totally something you want to avoid if you're a business owner in New York, because then you got another landlord. But then the other thing they did is they descended on her after that didn't go the way the city wanted. All of a sudden, they're unionizing. And I was talking to a lot, and they were kind of violent, those ones, but I talked to a few of them, and I've talked to a lot of from the 20 somethings to my age. But what I notice is the younger generations, it's almost like, and I'm not singling them out, there's a lot of hard workers there, but a lot of the laptop class younger generations, they have this sense that the work is there for them, not that they're there for the work. They have this sense of like, okay, I'm here, so that's why there's a job, rather than there's a job and I need to make money, so I'm going to go do that job. I've had a lot of these employees in my own business, and they will be like, well, they'll ask for a raise, and they'll say, well, because I just got a new car or my rent went up. And that's and that's a very, if you think about it, it's almost kind of like I would say almost like it's almost communist minded. Like, you should give me more because I need more. Whereas my mindset as a capitalist is, if you want more, work for more, increase your value. They've lost that, and I'm curious if you've seen that and why that is happening.
No, 100%. I interview people. And one of my questions is, how are you going to make me money? Right? You're a new
Exactly.
lawyer. You just graduated. I'm happy to. You just paid $150,000 for your law degree, but you need me to mentor you. You need me to show you how to make money. How are you going to help make me money? Are you going to go out to all the different business networking groups I go to? Are you going to go? It's like you said. Like, they don't. I don't know if it's because we've become so corporate, like such big corporate entities in so many different fields, that people don't understand that no, everyone has to work. I'm in 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, to keep the clients coming in, to keep winning cases, right? Because I'm in a very difficult profession. Nobody hires a lawyer that loses, right? So
Right.
I need to keep winning cases, bring
And I
people
I
in.
just want to state that it's Saturday morning. He's in his office, and last night I was texting with Jimmy, and it's like 8:30 at night. He's like, "Okay, I'm going to bed, and I'll see you in the morning." And I'm like, "Man, I need this guy's discipline. I need to get that back. Go ahead, because
No,
you
right.
work hard. You have to.
I
You're
am.
right.
I'm in my office so when my wife's a school teacher, so she's off now. When she's at work, I get to the office because I drop her off first. I get to the office like 7:30, 8 o'clock. When she's not here, I'm in here at 7 o'clock, 7:15. We get everything, I get everything going. Staff comes in. I have a great staff. I'm just in hiring and firing people. There's so many different factors, and there's a whole new generation that they just don't get. I don't listen. I've had kids graduating college asking me how, like I say, go write this letter. They don't even understand how to format a letter, and it's a little it's worrisome, right? Because the
That is
work,
worrisome.
the work isn't always here. You just paid again. Going back to law school graduates, I always said, I was like, go call your professor. Like, here's the question I have. You can't find me the answer. Go call one of your professors. You just paid them $150,000 for 3 years. Let them tell you the answer. The relationship doesn't end the day you walk out of law school. I still talk to some of my professors. I went to Syracuse. I still talk to some of my professors to this day. I still talk to some of my undergrad professors to this day. Like,
Well, you know what that's called? That's called being resourceful and creative in your approach. And it's like I do fear that they're not being taught how to be, independent minded Americans. Like, there's always, I find if I'm available to younger employees, not all of them, they never figure things out. So when I stop answering the phone and I make myself absent, amazingly, they do find it. They'll figure it out. But I mean, it's an investigation firm I was running, and I'd have people calling me, and they're like, "Hey, how do I find something out?" I'm like, "You're an investigator. Investigate, figure it out." And but let me segue into something else here, though. My daughter lives in Brooklyn, and she's just under 30. And she's hustling all the time. She has a very good job. She went to a very good school, one of the UCs out west. But she was also raised in the agricultural community. She was raised, working class, 400 head of cow, which is a thing out there. And you're up in the morning, you feed the cows, you're in 4-H, you're working all the time. You come home, you help grandpa fix the fencing. He's just getting home from his job at Department of Water and Power as an excavator driver, and then you're dealing with cows, and you're dealing with being as independent. Then they're trading things, and they're constantly like, "Hey, can I sublease the land I lease from you? This guy's going to give me 5 cows and $5,000," and they're constantly doing that. And I feel like her experience growing up allowed her, because she had a true working class experience, allows her to really excel among the New York laptop class, because she's like, boom, when she's not at work, and she makes good money. But when she's not at work, she has an account with one of these dog walking things. And if she's got an extra few hours and someone says, "Hey, can you walk my dog?" she'll do it. And I don't see that kind of work ethic a lot, but I do think some of it is what's being taught or not taught in college. I also think some of it is parenting, and we don't have to go too far down that. But you remember the helicopter parenting. It seems what came out of that was a lot of people unable to operate independently, but able to operate as a mob.
If you're like me and you're getting to that age at which your body sometimes just hurts all the time, please listen. Don't reach for another painkiller until you learn about this turmeric hack for pain and inflammation. You've probably already heard that turmeric is being used to fight inflammation and joint pain, but not all turmeric is created equal. Regular turmeric powder in your pantry will help you a little, but a leading pain doctor from Connecticut discovered a special turmeric extract that is 200 times more powerful than what you find in standard turmeric. And when he shared this turmeric secret with his patients, the results were extraordinary. This turmeric extract attacks pain at the source, turning it off like a light switch, so that pain not only often goes away, but stays away. Dr. Josh, the brains behind it all, has spent 20 years helping hundreds of thousands of Americans finally break free from constant aches and stiffness, and his turmeric hack has been the backbone of their success. So don't engage, if you can avoid it, with expensive surgeries, pain injections, or inefficient over-the-counter medications with side effects. Greet pain-free living. It's incredible stuff. I started taking it regularly, and I really did notice a difference. Again, you can't just take any old turmeric. If you want to learn more about Dr. Josh's turmeric secret and the exact method for how to use it in your routine, go to goldenrevive.com/dailycloud. The link is right below this video in the description. Click on it and start your journey toward a pain-free, healthier life.
Right.
It just hit me while we're talking.
And listen, there's also that whole peer pressure factor, and it's that what I'm getting at is when people are together in a mob, their actions are driven by not their own individual ideals. I don't know. I had always thought, like, when the city was crashing and burning during the Black Lives Matters riots, protests, that if I was alive during that time, if I would have been that 20-year-old kid during that time, me and my friends would have rioted. We wouldn't have been hitting the Apple stores. We would have been hitting the museums. I'd have a Monet in my bed, in my bedroom.
Totally.
They literally were breaking down the front for a $500 iPhone that they couldn't even ever use. It's something, like you said, the whole mob mentality just got taken away. There was no thought process behind it.
Yeah, but there's this. I think what happens, and I've talked about this on other shows, and I think it's important for people to understand, especially in campaigns. And I think this was Zohran really captured. I always call it that Joseph Campbell moment in everyone's life, the hero's journey. Everyone needs that, especially young men. So what I find is, like, a lot of the people out in rural America, and I grew up in rural America. I've lived in the cities. So I can speak for all of these. You might consider Paul Fussell, the great author from the 90s who wrote about class. He would consider someone like me and someone like you as well, X class, able to kind of fit in any class. But what I found was growing up with woods, and we were definitely poor, but we didn't know we were poor. We had woods. There was a lake nearby. We'd steal the neighbor's canoe. We'd always put it back, But we were always having an adventure. We were always doing something that made us feel like we were in the mix. We were in the adventure. We were having a bit of a hero's journey. And then, I joined the military 13 days after I graduated high school. And so I got that adventure and I got that grit in my life. And what I find is a lot of people, especially, I'd say especially in New York City, Manhattan especially, but, parts of Brooklyn, I'm friends with a he's the son of a very well-known writer. I won't say his name, but very well-known writer. Now, his dad won several Pulitzers, but he was in war and combat, and he was in the Tenderloin back when the Tenderloin was the Tenderloin, back when it was gritty and dangerous. And when I talked to my friend, his youngest son, I took him on a few adventures, and I'm glad I did. We almost got arrested in the Middle East, and because I was doing a competitive intel job, and I needed to he's an actor, and I'm like, okay, I need you to act like this position. And we screwed something up, and we were actually cat and mouse with security services. So to this day, he's written a screenplay about that and everything, and he's pursued these adventures. And I'm glad I came into his life, because I'm like, I wouldn't do that adventure that way. You're going to get killed. But he felt this need to have it because he was in the shadow of his father's adventures, and he didn't have any. And you mentioned about running down to the riots and everything. I hear you, because I was talking to a young man who's in our lives, and during the BLM thing, and he was running, he's going down, he's taking the train, he's getting down to the BLM riots. And I asked him, I said, well, why do you feel the need to go to these? And he's like, well, because, unarmed black men are getting killed, by the scores. And I'm like, did you check out those stats? It doesn't matter. It's the idea. And years later, I talked to him. I said, why did you feel the need to go to those riots, which is his right, not to riot, but to go to a protest? And he said, I just wanted to be a part of something that seemed significant. And so, yeah, I hear you. And I think that's when Zohran is walking down the street. And again, I totally, if you know my show, I disagree with everything this man stands for. Personally, I don't think he's. I think he is a shell. Okay, you can't be a Marxist and a Muslim. Let's just get that straight. You can't believe in God and be a Marxist. It doesn't work. But the thing is, he's the everyman. He is literally the guy with 1,000 faces. I don't want to say hero, but and he eat the chicken, the egg in every pot or the chicken in every pot. You want rent frozen? We'll freeze rent. You want affordable housing? We're going to get you affordable housing. We're going to crack down on the bad landlords. Well, the bad landlords are individual landlords. So, but there's an excitement that he creates, and I can see people are like, okay, this is something I can get behind, and and it's not as violent as these other things, but it has the same feeling and excitement, and I see what they're doing there, and he also definitely has the universities. I mean, his dad's a storied professor at Columbia, and so he had that in the bag, and a lot of his volunteers are from SUNY, and so he had that in the bag. But he does create an excitement with people, and I think the biggest reason is he's saying, "Hey, this is me." He's not lecturing people. He's saying, "Hey, come on with us. Let's go. Come on, we're walking this way."
Listen, you're 100% correct. And the messaging from Cuomo and every other DSA candidate had very similar messaging. He just delivered it better. Cuomo's messaging was he's anti-Semitic. Okay, show us, like, what has this young man done that's anti-Semitic? Listen, it's a very touchy subject, what's going on over in Israel between the Palestinians, October 7th. It's all wrapped in. Does saying you don't want innocent Palestinians killed by Israeli bombs make you anti-Semitic? I would hope not, because then they're going to start calling me anti-Semitic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm against war at every level. And if you watch the debate, all the politicians are up there. They're like, if you're mayor, where's the first place you're going to go visit? Almost every candidate was like, I'm going to go visit Israel. I'm going to go visit Israel. They get to Zohran, and he says, I'm not visiting anywhere. I'm going to visit everywhere in New York City because I'm going to be the mayor of New York City. And it was like, he prepared for that question. He had the answer, and he sold it. So, look, even the fear-mongering, in all fairness, again, I disagree with every single position this young man stands for, but the idea that you're going to fear-monger New York City residents into, hey, he's a Muslim, let's forget about 9/11, like, listen, you can't blame every Muslim worldwide for that terrible tragedy. And the idea, right. I've read some articles that they want to remove his citizenship. They want to have him. I don't like that. I live in Brooklyn, and I don't like it. And I would go to court on behalf of this young man and fight for his right to say the things he's saying and to do and run this campaign. And I would really hope that nobody is serious that we're going to revoke his citizenship and remove him. Like, that's a terrible, terrible thing to do.
Are they talking about revoking it, or are they talking? Okay, yeah, because I saw some rumblings of that. I didn't want to go down that. Let's say he is here, just hypothetically, illegally. All right, it's bad message. Wouldn't you agree? It's bad messaging for a campaign, because to me it signals like I'm not good enough to fight him at his level, so I'm going to take the snaky approach and cut him down from beneath.
So that's interesting you said that. I was actually talking, look, if they said he's a citizen, they said his papers are fine. As long as he's here legally, if he is an illegal citizen. I have no problem with that. Right. If he's an illegal citizen, and then that's an actual issue, because the Court of Appeal said illegal citizens aren't allowed to participate in our electoral process. I mean, they could go down a lot of rabbit holes, but let's just focus on the policies. The policies are bad, and they're trying to sell us current Mayor Adams right now. They're like, everyone has to consolidate behind the current Mayor Adams. They're selling us snake oil again. These are a bunch of wolves in sheep's clothing. Let's talk
Right.
about Mayor Adams. He was the number one defund the police. He ran in 2021 on defund the police. He turned around. He's now 4 years later, after all the issues we're having, he's going to fix things. Zohan wants to give people government-run grocery stores. Mayor Adams had us as a sanctuary city giving debit cards to illegal immigrants who were up in hotels. There's nothing more socialist than that. Like,
did you get over to Hall Street during that time?
Right, yeah.
Good Lord, man.
Let's be very clear. New York City, we need to consolidate around a mayor that's been part of the people. He's been for the people.
Mm-hmm.
And that, at this point, I personally am speaking that I believe Mr. Curtis Lewa should everyone consolidate around him. The club hasn't taken a vote on who we're going to endorse for mayor yet. So I just want to make sure that, everyone watching is clear that that's just Jim Wagner personally. There's no possible way I could see the socialists, running New York. Again, put a 33-year-old in charge of any multi-trillion-dollar business.
Look at LA though, man. It's like Mayor Bass. She's like the hive mother of the socialists that this kid grew up in. I mean, seriously, like was down in Cuba and she's running LA.
Oh, fair enough. And LA doesn't even have a population of Brooklyn. LA is a small little city. I don't think LA. What's LA's total population? Brooklyn's at 2 million.
That's are we counting illegals or not?
Right, let's go by, right. Fair enough, right? If we just go by the census, right? In Brooklyn, our census says we're at 2 million. So if we count the illegals, we're probably closer to like 3.5.
Well, LA's massive landmass, and it's got a lot of people there. It's just not as condensed. I'm not a big fan of LA. I lived in California, but it's just, I think the key thing with LA is it's I think it's like the 7th largest economy in the world. And that's where the power comes in. And that's scary and then Brooklyn and New York as a whole, that's to me, and tell me if I'm missing anything, we're talking ports, we're talking the United Nations meetings, we're talking a huge chunk of the country's population is in New York City. It's a significant percentage for one city. It's the reason why a lot of people don't realize, and by the way, for those people that say, let California fall off the map or to hell with New York, you're stupid. Because if you have a perforated nation, you have a nation that's not going to last long. And the people knew that during the Civil War, and they knew you have to keep it together. Guys, we got to keep it together because it's also the gateway to Canada. It's also a huge agricultural center for the East Coast. People don't realize how big the farms in New York are. And I live in, up there in the Hudson Valley, and I've gone all over New York. I used to investigate on reservations, but it's huge. It's a huge city, and it's most of the counties, I would say, and I could be wrong, but most of the counties outside New York City, they tend to lean red. They just don't have the population density. And
so, no, I agree. You know what? Something before we lose topic on it, the idea of
two Irish guys talking over coffee, we're going to lose a lot of topics. We're just rolling.
Well, you know what I wanted? I didn't want us to lose the fact, and I try to explain to people the idea that a Muslim is a communist, right? The idea that a Catholic can be a communist, the idea that a Jewish person can be a communist. Exactly. Like it's like almost like no one's ever read Karl Marx, and I've had 25 years ago in undergrad, I read Karl Marx, right? It's religion is the opiate of the people, right? I think that's the famous Karl Marx quote about religion. It's the socialism. If you take away imperfect humans, socialism, communism is really heaven on earth. That's the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. Everything's perfect. People will have full food. They'll have everything. The reason it will never work is because humans are imperfect, right?
Right.
You have 400,000, 500,000 kids, young people under 30 who all believe they know what's best for everybody. Hey,
totally.
That's what
Totally.
we're right. That's what we're dealing with. You could let's be very clear. We, as the entire world, we could take away every billionaire, take away all their money, and redistribute it. And I'm telling you, we will have the exact same problems tomorrow. All the money in the world can't fix the
Right.
social problems we have. The social
Yeah,
problems.
look, as long as there's greed, and I mean, I think that's why capitalism it makes so much sense. I think communism, socialism, and I always say socialism is the lobby that you go in to get to communism, but they don't. They go against human nature because you're right. As long as we have imperfect humans, and really, I think we're all perfect humans. We're all just different. So I think as long as humans are different, those things can never work, and history has shown that. But being forced to donate things, being forced to help people. And you mentioned something really, really important, and that is that mentality of we know what you need, we're going to help you. And I remember being on a podcast, and I invited him on. He's a good friend of mine, but he's a younger guy, and he's kind of center left. And he said, while we were off camera, and it's kind of like a panel thing, it's all young people, and they're talking, and they were talking politics during the break, and I heard him say, "Yeah, but what about that guy in Tennessee who's on his porch whittling a stick, and how do we get to him and get him more involved in helping his community and everything?" And I piped up and I said, "How about you just leave him alone, because that's what he wants to do?" And they were floored by this. Like, why would anyone just want to do nothing? Because that's his right. But that mentality, and then one of the young people in my life, they were on a conference call doing the online school during the pandemic, and it's a small house. I wasn't eavesdropping, but they're having something about political science class, and they all laugh, and they're all going over policies and everything that are at the presidential level for some project they're working on. And then I hear one of them go, "Oh, guys, there's so much we need to fix." And I'm looking like, oh my God, they're going to be running the country soon.
Right. If we
And if it's not broken, they'll find a way to break it so they can fix it.
Right, and again, it all comes back to government being evil, right? It's even the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's
Right.
that I was in a restaurant yesterday. I was eating lunch, and it's a restaurant that has like $60 hamburgers, and the table. But like you said, not eavesdropping, just hearing the people speak. The woman's proudly talking about how she's a democratic socialist of America, and I'm like, yeah, you're sitting here instead of up at the cheap diner around the corner. We're in this restaurant we had to make reservations for, eating a $60 cheeseburger. Like, please, you're not a democratic socialist of America. You're a rich person who feels guilty that they have money. I don't know what to tell you, right?
Yeah, and I never run. I remember my wife. She used to call herself a democratic socialist, and I remember thinking that kind of seems like a contradiction, but I remember her own son would say that makes no sense. And yet, granted, he's on the opposite side of politics that I am, but he'd always question her on that. He's like, "Mom, technically that makes no sense, and it's just a label." And you're right, because like there's a like they're so unaware. I'll try to call up the tweet, but I see this lady last night. She's a professor at SUNY, and that's CUNY for people who are trying to Google it. But and someone on the right had stupidly said, "Oh, they're all just single people with cats," and blah. No, they're not. They're upper middle class people with connections, and so she tried to make herself almost working class. She's like, "Well, I have two kids at home, and I'm a full time professor." And so I guess I don't fit your mold. And I look her up, and she's a Democratic Socialist of America. She's a tenured professor at SUNY. She's on her Instagram. It seems like every day she has time to do, power yoga and running in the park. And she formed a run club and all this. And it's all these rich kind of like Central Park moms. And but she's trying to say, look, I'm a mom, so I'm just like you. And they're just so unaware. But what they do have is as professors, they have access to young people. And so I think her message should have been like, well, I am who I am, but the thing is, I want other people to figure out who they are, something like that, because young people love that. And if you watch Mahmoud Mamdani's speech in Colombia, and I'll send it to you, but it's I get it. I mean, don't get me wrong. He actually does call for violence, despite all his protestations of this. And he's from Uganda. He's pretty impressive academic career. He was shipped over here during those Kennedy flights in the '60s to protest civil rights in Alabama. And then and then of course it ended at Columbia. Columbia seems to be the epicenter of Marxist thought in this country. But he's on the steps of SUNY during the October 7th, that illegal encampment thing that they did up there at Columbia.
Yep.
And it's really interesting to hear the way this guy talks. And I think Zohran learned from his father how to message, probably learned from his Syrian wife, who's a movie producer, and probably learned from his mom, who was also in the film business. But they know how to message, and the father comes across as very, I'm an old man, I just want to share my knowledge. But when you really look into that, I spent hours last night watching this guy's lectures and everything, because I do investigate everything. I get to know everything. But this guy, he knows how to get a crowd going fast. And I was impressed, not by what they were doing, but their ability, this family's ability to read people and read mobs on the spot and know exactly how to play them like a fiddle. It's amazing. Really quickly, Jimmy, because I just grabbed the mic from you and I didn't mean to, but I'm looking at Zohran's platform, right? And it seems a lot of the promises he's making are things that are already happening. Like, for instance, we talked about the bus fare. Well, based on what you said, it's already free.
It is. They're not enforcing bus fare, right? So here's the other thing for the outer boroughs. Going back to true children of the working class, we all had to take that bus. We had to take the bus to school. We had to take the bus to work. And I feel I can speak for a lot of us to say we all sat in those bus stops during the rain, during the sleet, during the snow, and we all dreamed one day of not having to take the bus anymore, right?
Right.
It goes back to Jacob's ladder, back to the cashier. The idea is you suffer now. We suffer by taking this bus so that one day we can drive the BMW. We work the cashier thing so one day I can run my own bodega and have six people working for me. Like, what they're doing is they're normalizing the ladder. They're cutting out the dreams of people. Like, if we're not going to dream to improve our life, like giving everyone, it's not, you keep saying make buses free. It'll be taxpayer funded. There's a recent article, I haven't been able to completely analyze it. It says that wants to raise the taxes, property taxes, in traditionally like Caucasian neighborhoods. First of all, I don't even know what a Caucasian neighborhood is in Brooklyn, right? Pretty much every neighborhood is totally mixed. So I'd like to see where he's gonna do that. But there's a lot. Let's going back to the free buses. Nobody's paying for the buses. It's my understanding that most people are jumping the turnstile. So look, you already got it free. So go on. What's your next one?
Well, I don't understand too how you ways in the beginning. This goes to show like,
oh, that's what's happening. I'm trying to figure out. My camera must have been falling down on the monitor. I apologize.
No, that's okay. But the 36. So you're giving away free buses, which will raise 1.5 billion. I just don't understand how that. Oh, and economic benefits. Okay, we'll move on. I don't want to unpack that right now. So let me see. The other one is, well, let's talk about Department of Community Safety.
Right.
Okay, this is a big one. And if you got a minute, I know you probably got to get to work soon, but let's just listen to what he has to say.
Sure.
Every New Yorker deserves to be safe, and today I'm announcing a plan to deliver exactly that. Public safety is created by stable homes, good-paying work, and well-resourced neighborhoods. Addressing these issues are at the core of our campaign. But we must also aggressively pursue evidence-based strategies that prevent violence and crime before they occur. I will create a Department of Community Safety, the DCS. This new agency will coordinate a whole-of-government approach to protect New Yorkers like never before. We will invest in citywide mental health outreach and crisis response, expand gun violence prevention programs, address hate, and tackle homelessness. The DCS will make public transit safer, placing dedicated outreach workers in our subway stations, transforming vacant commercial units to provide medical services and connections to long-term care, and investing in transit ambassadors to assist New Yorkers on their journeys. There will be visible, trained teams in our subways. Their presence and their work will make all of us safer. Police have a critical role to play, but right now we're relying on them to deal with the failures of our social safety net, which is preventing them from doing their actual jobs. It's one of the reasons so many crimes are left unresolved. New Yorkers deserve a leader that treats public safety with the seriousness it deserves. I invite you to learn more about the Department of Community Safety at zohranfornyc.com/safety.
I just want to point out something there too. He's been watching Steve Bannon, because did you hear the music and that kind of like crusade type, something big is happening, there's something big that's happening, the music's swelling, and you also caught how he's always shifting. He's got he didn't filter out the sounds of the people. He's in all those places that are recognizable as a New Yorker. But anyways, what did you catch from the actual message, or it sounds to me like he's not saying anything.
No, he's not saying anything. He's giving broad generalizations. And again, this goes back to what we initially discussed, right? That marketing, that commercial making, like you said, that is brilliant. I believe his mother was one of the executive director of Slumdog Millionaire. So we're talking, he's a young man that has more money than most people in Brooklyn, probably more money than most people. Right. He's super wealthy.
He was I watched a video last night from like 2016. He had a job with Disney for that Princess of Ottawa or something like that. He was basically the music director at that age. So obviously he's well connected to the whole Hollywood scene, because you get that sense in this is professional level directing here.
I'm going to tell you, if you go back to the beginning, the picture of Chambers Street stop, that is I'm not sure if he's really there, because that is really so. Go to the very beginning. I could be wrong, but just go to the
New Yorker deserves to be safe.
Right there. Look at that. That is way too empty, way too clean. That's a fake background. That's superimposed. I've been at Chambers Street 100 times. It has never been that clean.
Oh, that is a good catch. I'm
wondering now if he just, because look at the white on the, like that, everything about it. I don't think he's really standing in front.
No, I've been to Chambers Street. It's teeming all the time.
Right. Where do you ever get Chambers Street? Not a single person. Nowhere.
Not a single person, and I've never seen it that clean. It's pretty clean place compared, but
yeah, no, it is one of the cleaner places, and it is. It's just there's something about the flatness. Look,
I think you're right. So, look at this here. Look at the angle of this, right?
Yes.
Perpendicular. Now look at this.
They're opposite of each other.
You see, it's leaning over, like curving over, and that should be consistent. If it was a fisheye lens, it'd be leaning this way and then leaning this way. But this one almost looks like it was pasted in.
Right.
You see that?
Even the lighting. I don't look. I could be wrong. I wasn't there. But I think, and what I'm getting at is it just.
Well, it's they didn't stop, for anyone that might ask. They didn't stop pedestrian traffic because that's illegal.
Right.
And that'd be a scandal. So that's interesting.
You don't think he could get a permit that would permit him to stop?
You're not allowed to.
Okay.
Yeah, I know this because when I started dating Naomi Wolf, my wife, who you know very well, she lived in the West Village. So we lived down on it was like over near NYU. And they were always shooting. That's where all the brownstones are and everything. Always shooting movies all the time.
Right.
And you got to love my wife. Even back then when she was more left, she'd walk through and the cops would try to stop her. She's like, you can't do that. She's always about civil liberties. And she gets in the cop's face. And I remember the first time my son went out with her, he's like 7 or 8. And she took him for a walk around the block and everything. And I said, "Hey, how was your walk in New York City?" He said, "Oh, it was a lot of fun. Naomi was yelling at a cop." And it's because you can't impede pedestrian traffic. That's why a lot of movies you see. I shot a movie on Broadway. There's a movie with Alec Baldwin and Dylan McDermott called Blind. And I got to play the assassin in the movie, which my part was cut, but I'm still on the IMDb. But my job was to throw this actor in front of a bus that they'll CGI in, and then I had to straighten out my suit, turn around, and storm down the subway. And so I was kind of like dodging people as I go down the subway, and they're like, "No, Brian, you can't do that," because I couldn't stop the traffic. Right. And so they're like, "You just got to go through them." And I'm like, "Okay." So I threw the guy, turned around, and just barreled through people like an assassin would. But you can't stop. So we have enough people on the show. They're going to dig into this. This was a good catch
But keep playing. I'm curious if the rest of it.
Let's do it.
And today I'm announcing a plan to deliver exactly that. Public safety is created by stable homes, good paying work, and well-resourced neighborhoods. Addressing these issues are at the core of our campaign. But we must also aggressively pursue evidence-based strategies that prevent violence and crime
right.
before
I'm sorry,
they occur.
Jimmy, you're right.
I will create a department of community...
Sorry to call you dude. I was around my 14-year-old all week. Check this out. No. Watch it move. Not to go down this rabbit hole, but people love this. Like, this is what the show's at the core really about, is investigating everything. Watch the thing actually on the Chambers Street side. Watch this kind of does this weird movement. You keep watching. Watch this. Let me just back up a little here. Okay.
Aggressively pursue evidence-based strategies that prevent violence and crime before they occur. I will create a department of community safety.
I did see a guy down there
I did see a guy down there too.
I did see a guy down there, but I don't know.
But that still doesn't make it not a fake background.
I think, I think what they probably did was found a corner of like a quieter corner and then superimposed the Chambers Street sign, because that would explain why that side of the picture is the way it is, because it's the sun is clearly up. It's never going to be that dead ever. But
listen, again, I don't know. I just felt as though it leads to the whole illusion. This guy he's 33 years old, right? He's only been in state senate for 4 years. It's asking for disaster. So there's two things.
It's the Obama playbook, though.
Right. Agreed.
It's the Obama playbook.
Look, he's either going to get into office and be naive, and we're going to have a lot of problems, or he's going to get into office and his wolf in sheep's clothing act is really going to come out. So just so anyone understands, you Brian, I'm sure you're aware of this, but you understand under Karl Marx's theory of communism, it starts with socialism, then you have a violent revolution that leads to communism. There is no peaceful, according to Karl Marx, there's no peaceful transition. And how does that entertain?
Well, remember what happened with Marx. Like Marx was this guy. Marx was living on family trust. He's upper class. He's living on his inheritance. He actually spent his inheritance before his dad died. And so when his dad died, there was nothing left, but that allowed him to be the perpetual college student. He'd never actually been to a factory at the time when he was writing the Communist Manifesto with Engels, and Engels did most of the heavy lifting. But according to many, many biographies of Karl Marx, he'd never actually been to a factory. He was just doing that typical Columbia-style thing of looking out from, the Starbucks on the 33rd floor of some building in Midtown and saying, I know what the people really need, without getting to know the people. And that is at the heart of... And so the danger of all of this is just like what happened with Marx. Marx almost faded into obscurity, okay? And then some things popped up, and he got invited to France and everything during their Second Republic or Third Republic, whatever it was. But then when you get the Lenin-minded people involved, okay, they're like, nah, screw this. They're not going to overthrow their governments on their own. we need to give it a push with some weapons and some militant action. And so that's where, these it's a nice idea to think, get a bunch of people together, help pick up the little guy. That's a nice idea. Okay. But when the little guy doesn't want to be picked up, or not enough people want to participate in that because they're busy, and then you turn into an armed get up, we're going to help you whether you like it or not. And that's where it becomes that communism. That's where Lenin's influence came in. We get a violent overthrow. And no, it's not going to be community running everything. The government's going to run it. And that's what happens here. Well, we're already in communism. If you think about it, he can call himself a socialist all he wants. But because he's the government and because he wants to take over all these public institutions and private institutions, that makes it communism.